Hi guys, it's Amy with Aim to Plan, and today we are going to be talking digital planners. So, I'm going to preface this by saying that I am a person who plans on paper. So, this is not going to be like a tutorial for setting up Google Calendar. If you want that and want me to include that as part of this series, then please do let me know, and I'm more than happy to do that. I have a couple of videos on digital tools on my channel, but I'm really here to talk about how I plan using multiple formats. And so, that's what this video is about. Again, I'm more than happy to record other videos because this is just like I've talked about with some of my previous videos. This is really meant to be a deep dive into my planner system, not my planner system on paper per se, but just how I use my planners is the how of how I use my planners. And so if setting up Google Calendars is something that you're interested in, just leave me a comment and I'm more than happy to record those videos. But again, this video is all about how I switch between digital and analog. Like, how do I plan on paper and using my phone typically? Sometimes I do it on, on my computer, but most of my digital stuff happens on my phone. So how do I balance it? What do I do, and how does this work? So I'm gonna just be totally upfront. I will say that 90% of my plans do end up on my phone first. Okay, my phone is, I would say, the most up-to-date version of my schedule that exists. And so the reason for that is for a number of reasons. One, I have to use a digital calendar for my job. And so I need to be able to have my personal plans on digital format so that way I can easily cross-reference my personal calendars with my work calendar. I work from home, and so when I get called into a meeting, regardless of the hour, but like if I have a meeting my time at 5 o'clock, I want to know what's happening in my personal life so that way I can make plans and get people to pick up my kids, all of those things that you have to do when you're managing a job and, home responsibilities. So having my calendar digital helps me with that, right? So having my personal notes or my personal events on, on digital format, that helps me with like, don't double book myself. The other thing is, just like I said, I think it's very easy to be able to just duplicate events from my Google Calendar, which is what I use for my personal life, and move that into or duplicate that into my Outlook, which is what I use for my work life. And so it's just easier to manage that kind of like copy and paste function if my personal plans are already digital. And again, this is really not a deep dive into like digital planning. I can do a separate video about that. I keep like every time I talk about something, I feel like there's another rabbit hole I can go down. So I just mentioned how I duplicate personal events into work events, and I do actually the same thing like in the opposite direction. So I sometimes take work events and duplicate it into my personal planner. How do I do that digitally? That could be a whole separate video, and I might do that. Again, like this whole series is like it's really kind of fun because I get to talk about like in a very like, I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place, so I don't know that it's very deliberate, but it's like at a much more like thoughtful and like thorough pace than I normally do with my like planner like setup and flip through videos. So all that to say, I might record a separate video. If you're interested in that, please do let me know, and I can talk about just simply the digital side of things, especially digital like management of like multiple calendars digitally. I use I would say maybe like 15-ish 10-15 calendars, digital calendars. So definitely it's something that I do a lot of work in. I don't think a lot to manage, but I definitely do that. All right, so let's get back to the point, Amy. Get back to the point. Today, I'm going to be talking about how I work in these two things, right? And so I went down that rabbit trail, but like the initial point was 90% of the time, my plans end up or like start off in my digital calendar. It ends up on Google Calendar first, okay? Now, I love being able to use a paper planner. I like to be able to see things well in advance. I don't really enjoy the idea of like having my plans only in digital format simply because sometimes I don't carry this with me. This, I can keep in my pocket. I can use this all the time. Same with my phone. I get that, some people just like their phones, but I just like having it on paper. And so that's just a me thing. It doesn't have to be a you thing, but definitely I like to track in both areas. Now, again, full disclosure, right? It starts off in my digital calendar on Google Calendar. It doesn't always transfer to this book, okay? So there are absolutely a ton of plans that I put in here, right? I've got events all the way through the end of December. Like, let me show you. Last Sunday of December is December 28th. I've written something in there. It's church, right? But I've written it in there, okay? So I do like to write things in this book. I also, though, because I use my digital calendar the way that I do also, or like I actually prefer to have them in my digital calendar first. And so a lot of times I don't actually transfer them over here for whatever reason. Like, if I had to be honest, I could probably get rid of this. I just really love this. I just love being able to write my plans out by hand. I feel like the act of writing things really helps me to remember that I am doing something. And honestly, let's just be honest here. Sometimes when I write it down, I realize that I can't do it, right? So, if I write it and I see I have, like, in this book, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines per day. If I'm writing 5 lines of events, that's a lot for a day, right? I feel like that's too many events for a day. And so I have to really consider how I balance my day. And I don't really get that sense when I'm in a calendar. A lot of times too, in my calendar, I have routine events, right? So you can see I wrote church, right? Of course, church is a big deal for us. We go every single week, unless we're out of town, but we go, and it's 3 hours of our morning on Sunday morning. But I like to have it in here because in my phone it's also blocked out for that time, but I just don't feel like I'm as aware of the time, right? I hope that makes sense, but that's just how I feel about it. I'm sure there's some psychology there, and I should do a deep dive into that, adding that to my list to think about it. But I really like writing it out, one, because I'm limited in space, right? That's a big deal, right? On Google Calendar, I can list a million different things, right? But two, I'm more aware of the sense of time that each event requires. I don't have to list the time. And in fact, I don't. You can see I don't list the time, but I'm more aware that there is time that exists with each of these activities. And the third reason is that for Google Calendar, I have a lot of events that don't apply to me, all right? So for example, and I'm going to show you this, right? We're at the end of February, so I'm going to go to March. I know there's probably going to be some glare here, but like for March, just as an example, you can see this note here. Actually, I don't know if you can see it, but I clicked on, I think this is March 1st, okay? There's a note here that says attendance incentive. So just to explain this, you can see this actually starts, I don't know if you can see, but it starts February 24th, right? So this attendance incentive is for Sophia. She is doing something, well, her school is promoting like perfect attendance for basically the end of February through the end of March. I like to write that in obviously I wrote it in my calendar, right? But it's not necessarily something that I have to keep track of, right? Like it's a note to myself, and it's in my calendar. It's, I guess, an event or a plan, right? We want to get her to school every single day, but also it doesn't apply to me. It's not really something that I need to do anything about. It's not a doctor's appointment that I have to go to. So hopefully that makes sense. It's like an indirect note to myself, right? Here in this book, these things, I generally speaking write only the things that apply to me, right? And then when it goes back into my bigger like catch-all planner on the monthly spread, I might add in those other things that apply to Sophia, or is only something that Sophia would get involved in, but mostly it's only going to be for me, right? Google Calendar catches all of those things. Again, I have probably 10 personal planners. The way that I separate them is, very simply, like I have one for me, all right, one for events that I and Sophia do together, one that is for me and Rose to do together. So like if she has to go to a doctor's appointment, obviously one of her parents has to go with her because Rose is 2. She's not driving herself. She's not doing that herself, right? I have all of the different combinations, configurations of a family of 4. Okay, so I have a calendar just for me and my husband. I have calendars for him with the girls. I have calendars for me and the girls. I have a calendar just for the girls. I have a calendar for the family of 4. I also have calendars for my extended family. So there are notes in here. Well, Sophia doesn't have access to them, but I have created calendars for my extended family. So there are notes that my sisters put into the calendars that, they're nice to know, but I don't necessarily need to act on them, right? So what happens then is I use my Google Calendar and I write the important things down in here for myself. Generally speaking, I try to write them down at the same time. Like if I get an event, I'm going to write it in my phone and then try to sit down and write it down here. But that doesn't always happen. So sometimes there are things in here that are not super updated. Like I'm just going to show you this because I actually just wrote this like maybe 2 weeks ago. I put Go Wild in the dates. Actually, no, that was about a month ago. Whenever they announced it, I went in here and I wrote it in here, right? I think I put it in here too, right? There it is. Go Wild, right? Go Wild Indie. There it is right there. So, I try to like duplicate, right? There are events in here that I don't write in here for a number of reasons. So one example here is like, again, it's an event like violin lesson, STEM lab for Sophia. That's when she's in school. I'm not going to write that in here just because that doesn't apply to me. The violin lesson, I do have to drive her to violin. I put the time, like I'll just explain violin specifically. I have Sophia has a preferred time that she goes to violin, but we change it every single week. So I put it Tuesdays at 5. But it could be that the week before we decide that we need to move it to Thursday, or I'm sick, or the violin teacher is sick, or she has a conflict. So even though I have it set for that time, it's not always that time. So I don't put those in here either for that same reason. Church, always the same time. It's always Sunday, starting at 9, starting at 10, starting at 11, right? But violin, I can put it in here. Absolutely, I can put it in here, and I really should. Like, I should model what I'm talking about. But I would put it in here, but it might change, right? So that's definitely something for me to do. Again, like this, I actually need to go in and update. I have my pen. I should go in here and update. But it's not for this video. I'm just gonna do it after the fact. I actually wrote in here. Total side note, but I wrote in here with a ballpoint pen, and so I can use this one. This is like a cute little ballpoint pen that Sophia has, or I can find the 4-point big ballpoint pen that I was using. But I'm gonna go in here and transfer my Google calendar notes in here, just because I have to practice what I preach, right? But all of my events do end up in here. I would say 70% of my events, especially non-routine events, so things that are like not the weekly, I do it every single week kind of events, I write in here. I also do write in work events that occur after normal like work hours for me. So anything that's like when the kids might be at home with me, I write in here as well. So all of those things go in here. They are supposed to go in here. I don't always write it in here, but I do like to have this planner for a number of reasons, as I've already explained to you. And I do use the combination of Google Calendar and this cute little book to be able to do that. All right. So I don't know. This video was probably a little bit more like, I don't know what I'm talking about than the other videos, but hopefully you still understood or got something from the way that I do this. I am, just like I'm saying, I am going to go back in here and update this just because, I do love having my notes on paper. And so I do need to do that. It's been super busy for me. And so I haven't updated this as much as I normally would, but I think the general idea of like plans go from Google Calendar into this paper planner, that applies all the time, right? There are some cases where I write in here first, but that's, I would say, very, very rare. So anyway, that is this video. Hopefully you got something from it. If you did, please do leave me a comment. Let me know. Let me know if there are other videos that you're interested in me recording as part of this deep dive into my planner system. I've really been enjoying recording these videos. Again, part of it is me talking out loud and explaining my system and, being a little bit more methodical, in air quotes. I don't know, sometimes I'm not that methodical, but at least trying to slow down and explain myself a little bit more thoroughly. I think that's very helpful, and so I hope you are enjoying it. Again, leave me comments if there are things that you want to see, want to hear more about, want to learn about in terms of my planner system or my planner style or how I plan. I'm very happy to take your feedback and record those videos for you. But if you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up, and until the next video, you guys, bye.